Cracks are deepening in the foundation of the US-led global economic order, or so we're led to believe, while a new narrative takes hold, not one born in Beijing or Moscow, but perhaps seeded quietly in boardrooms, think tanks and financial institutions in London, New York and Brussels. At first glance, the rise of the BRICS Plus alliance and the shift towards a multipolar financial world appear to challenge the West. But if we look a little more closer, a more complex picture emerges. This global realignment may have been planned, enabled, and even embraced by key actors within the very system it now seems to threaten. This chronology challenges conventional wisdom, starting with the World Bank's early assessment of China, tracking the rise of BRICS and examining the financial frameworks quietly developed in Western capitals to support this new order. And so we ask the bold question, was the so-called decline of Western hegemony actually a strategic pivot all along? The key economic narrative of our time is of a declining West and a rising East, a global shift away from the Washington-led economic consensus towards a more pragmatic, partnership-based approach. The rise of the BRICS Plus economies, an alliance of major developing nations, is often seen as symbolic of this transformation. This shift is increasingly being described as an economic and geopolitical bifurcation of the world into two distinct blocks. The BBC clearly outlines the perceived threat to the US and Western hegemony. The group was designed to bring together the world's most important developing countries to challenge the political and economic power of the wealthier nations of North America and Western Europe, they say. Currently, the expanded BRICS group accounts for 45% of the world's population and almost a third of global GDP. Given the policies of economic stagnation in the West and higher growth rates in many BRICS nations, their importance in the global economy is set to grow. Moreover, more countries are incentivized to join the alliance, reacting to the ongoing shift in the global economic center of gravity, and what many view as increasingly dysfunctional Western economic and geopolitical strategies. But to understand the nature of this threat, we must examine its foundations. China 2020, a Western endorsement. In 1997, the World Bank released a report entitled China 2020, acknowledging China's impressive growth since its 1978 reforms. The report identified hurdles to overcome, but recognized China's potential for sustained economic success. One paragraph stands out. Deepening integration with the world trading system will bring further benefits of China's comparative advantages. Sustaining FDI, foreign direct investment, will bring new management know-how, the latest technologies embodied in capital, equipment, and the most recent techniques in international marketing. And perhaps most notably, with resolute leadership at home and statesman-like policies from the world's industrial power, China can overcome these challenges. What this appears to be truly emphasizing is the need for the West to export human capital and technological transfers to help China's manufacturing really get up to speed while embracing their trade. And this certainly was aided by the role of multinational corporations. Just 4 years later, the world opened its arms to China. In 2001, Jim O'Neill, then head of global economic research at Goldman Sachs, wrote Building Better Global Economic BRICS. This paper marked the first use of the term BRICS and projected their increasing share of global GDP, with China leading the way. China might not be that eager. Despite their enormous economic progress, their social model is still extremely different to the G7 countries. India would almost definitely be the least eager to join the G9 club. They might regard any obligations as unwelcome, as well as possibly seeing their own experience as limiting their ability to give advice. He concluded world policy-making forums should be reorganised and in particular the G7 should be adjusted to incorporate BRIC representatives. The timing of this paper is noteworthy, for it was released on the 30th of November 2001. The following month saw China officially join the World Trade Organization, with all 142 member countries approving their entry. A moment that transformed global trade and lifted hundreds of millions of Chinese people out of poverty, facilitating a sharp increase in China's economic growth, as we can see, while accelerating US deindustrialization as manufacturing jobs fell. The Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, and China's strategic vision. In 2013, President Xi Jinping introduced the Silk Road Economic Belt and Maritime Silk Road, together forming the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI. This ambitious infrastructure plan sought to reshape global connectivity and enhance China's centrality in global trade. In 2015, George Osborne, former UK Chancellor, played a significant role in the founding and early development of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, or AIIB, to which the US feigned outrage. The AIIB claims as a multilateral development bank focused on developing Asia, but with members from all over the world, our investments in infrastructure and other productive sectors seek to foster sustainable economic development, create wealth, and improve infrastructure connectivity. By 2020, the AIIB had 103 approved members, representing 79% of global population and 65% of GDP. After Osborne's 2015 announcement, his colleague Danny Alexander, former UK Treasury official, became Vice President of the AIIB. Meanwhile, Jim O'Neill, writing for the World Economic Forum, urged why the world must accept China's economic rise. Then Chancellor George Osborne echoed these sentiments during his visit to China in 2015, stating, "I want Britain to be China's best partner in the West." Osborne led efforts to make London a major offshore trading hub for the Chinese currency, further integrating China's currency into global markets. A year later, in 2016, the Washington-based International Monetary Fund, IMF, made a pivotal decision. It added the Chinese yuan to its elite special drawing rights SDR currency basket. This was not merely symbolic. The move firstly legitimized the yuan as a global reserve currency, placing it alongside the US dollar, euro, Japanese yen, British pound, i.e. the currencies of the world's most developed economies. This also helped facilitate BRI transactions in yuan, giving Chinese banks and infrastructure firms the ability to denominate loans and contracts in their own currency. This helped to reduce reliance on the dollar and insulate projects from US financial influence. It also strengthened the BRICS financial ecosystem by offering an alternative reserve asset for central banks in emerging economies, especially those aligned with China's development model. It also helped challenge US dollar dominance by boosting confidence in yuan-denominated assets among global reserve managers, effectively encouraging central banks to diversify away from the dollar. This strategic milestone aligned with China's longer-term ambition of internationalizing their currency. In parallel, Beijing developed the Cross-Border International Payment Systems, CIPS, as an alternative to the US-influenced SWIFT network. While CIPS is smaller in scale and primarily facilitates yuan transactions, it provides a foundation for non-dollar trade settlements, supporting BRI operations and contributing to long-term BRICS Plus efforts to reduce reliance on the US dollar. Together, SDR inclusion and payment infrastructure development marked a turning point in the financial architecture of multipolarity, placing the yuan and, by extension, the Chinese model at the heart of a new non-Western economic order. the City of London and Chatham House. O'Neill had also taken a role on the board of Bruegel in 2013, a think tank devoted to policy research on economic issues, named after the artist Peter Bruegel, who's described as a 16th century painter whose work epitomises unvarnished and innovative depictions of life in Europe. The artist's work is extremely dark and includes pieces such as The Massacre of the Innocents, The Triumph of Death, and interestingly works depicting the Tower of Babel. Nevertheless, the think tank has great influence and is rated the top international economics policy think tank. By 2017, major think tanks were aligning with BRI goals. A joint report by Bruegel, Chatham House and others stated, "The success of the BRI will depend on how it is funded. Here, the depth and expertise of European financial markets, including the City of London, will play a critical role not only in ensuring the BRI lives up to its potential, but also that it is undertaken in a way that contributes to macro-prudential stability in China and delivers sustainable growth." In 2018, the City of London Corporation co-authored a paper with the People's Bank of China on BRI financing. Jim O'Neill became chair of Chatham House, reinforcing London's intellectual and financial alignment with BRI goals. Now, since 2018, the City of London has produced the London RMB Business Quarterly, essentially aiming to explore ways to strengthen London RMB business. In early 2019, the Lord Mayor of the City of London was in China to promote London's fintech capability, in his role as an ambassador for the UK's financial and professional services sector. He was meeting with members of the Chinese government and Chinese business leaders. Such dialogue continues to this day, when the Lord Mayor met with the Chinese Vice President earlier this year in an article which states, "China's domestic and foreign policies will remain consistent no matter how the world changes. China is willing to work with the UK as a strategic partner to strengthen communication and cooperation and promote a multipolar world." Interesting. O'Neill wrote in 2021 for the IMF, "My primary goal was to make a case for changing the framework for global economic governance." By 2023, he argued, "The eclipse of the dollar would not necessarily be a bad thing for the US. It is not optimal to have everyone else be so dependent on the American monetary system and the Federal Reserve's domestically driven priorities." Which is true. And in a separate interview, there is something quite admirable about the Chinese system's ability to broadly plan and stick to what it wants to develop. Amidst this global shift, even the Vatican appears to endorse the BRICS model. As financial and moral powers align behind multipolarity, Washington alone maintains its public opposition, perhaps to preserve a geopolitical illusion, while tacitly supporting the bloc via IMF policies. Now, this chronology reveals a surprising truth. The economic rise of BRICS Plus and the shift away from dollar dominance was not merely tolerated by the West, they were encouraged, financed and ideologically supported from within. From WTO accession to AIIB funding in London and from IMF reforms to Chatham House policy alignment, a picture emerges of a coordinated transition rather than confrontation. As Western economic models falter, the multipolar world order may be less an accidental consequence than a carefully managed evolution. This almost appears to be a deliberate repositioning of power. Many flags, one command. And if you found this video of interest, it would be well worth your time to understand a little about the BIS Committee on the Global Financial System, which we discussed in this video, for it gets far too little attention. So thanks so much for joining me. Let me know your thoughts in the comment, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.